Hello and good evening. I'm going to make a statement now that mankind are apes. Now you may think that's a strange thing to say, but why I say this is because it highlights something about the English language. I've just done a little check through the internet on the Domesday, written in 1088 at the request of William the Conqueror, which is a sort of inventory of what he has in his newly acquired lands, which we know today as certainly England and Wales. And that is written in an abbreviated Latin. Now, the information I'm giving you here is just purely from what I've looked up through a Google search, so I cannot be 100% on the validity or the truth of it. We can only go with the information we can access. So clearly, English as a language that we speak today is a slightly later development, I would say, and this is just purely a guess, around between 12 and 1300 in the calendar system Anno Domini. But when we look at such things as the physical body, humans, it is said, has 46 chromosomes, 23 base pairs, and it is often quoted that we are related to chimpanzees, which actually have 48, and I believe so do orangutans and gorillas, which are the apes. But rats, for example, have 21 chromosomes in pairs, which will give you 42. So not that far off. The mouse is 20 chromosomes. The domestic cat is 19. The dog, on the other hand, is 39. So whilst that deals with the physical, I would suggest that when I say mankind are apes, the word apes has a very different meaning. So let's just explain this a little bit further. I'm sure that you all know the sensation of feelings, be they good feelings or bad feelings or anything in between. Nothing you can point to in the physical body. Likewise, the conscious mind takes no part in the functionality of the organs, the flow of the blood around the body, and development and growth of cells and things. It seems to work as an automated system. So if we take the word apes, if we turn to what Rudolf Steiner says about this, we consist of 4 bodies, 1 physical body and 3 non-physical bodies. So those 4 bodies are the astral. This is a lot of people have this sensation or a feeling maybe not being able to sleep when there's a full moon. So there is clearly an influence on one of the bodies, which is the astral body. The astral and what is Rudolf Steiner calls the eye organization, which we could also call the soul, leaves the physical body when we are at rest, when we are what is known as asleep. The etheric body stays with the physical body and keeps everything ticking over. It stays at home, as it were, so the astral and the eye organization, or the soul, can come back into the body. You may experience just after you first wake up after a sleep that you don't feel quite with it. As Rudolf Steiner explains, it's because the eye organization and the astral body re-enter through the soles of the feet, and it takes until roughly the middle of the day for you to come completely back together. But then the whole process starts off again whereas where the astral and the eye organization will leave out the top of the head. So it's got a, shall we say, a completely different orbit going from north to south. So you have the astral body, you have the physical body, you have the etheric body, and the soul. So there are your four characters in sequence that gives the word apes. So it is quite correct to say that mankind are apes. But you can see from this example just how things have been twisted, how they've been misdirected into purely the physical aspect and totally disregarding what is unseen, what is not material. As a further example of this, when we look at the English language, and I've touched upon this on previous videos, when we take part in an action going from the to do to actually doing, the ing has a significance as it's in, and G, which you could say is grounded, or Gaia, which is a name for Earth. So the actual physical doing is in Earth, hence you have the ing. But if you swap the G and the N around, you get such words as sign and alignment. Notice that the G is totally silent. So the earthing, or the grounding, is now moved not on the end of the IN, but within the IN. It's a very cleverly thought out language, which the etymology is a wonderful tool for revealing these things when you start looking into them and you start breaking down the words as either acronyms, or if you start looking at the syllables. So if we take as a basis the word ject, you can have D, re, or in, prefixing that. You can also take the ECT part of that and you can put L, EL on it. So there is a meaning behind the sequences of these where these characters are put together to give us these words, which are actually spells. So the whole idea of mankind are apes actually does have a basis of truth in it, but it depends on the perspective you come at it, as whether you're only looking at the physical, which obviously has been promoted, and in a way is very misleading, because it leads us away from that spiritual connection. Again, something that is not in the physical, but something that is within. But if you were to go to a surgeon, you would not be able to identify it as a physical object. And yet, interestingly, when spirit separates from matter, there is actually a 2-pound weight loss when the body becomes purely human and the naturally destructive forces take hold and the body begins to disintegrate in 3 days. So mankind are apes is a perfect example of how this English language has been perfected as a spellcaster, and by looking at it in more detail we can actually uncover a lot more about who we are and what we are and what these words can reveal to us. If you think about the word, if you put man in it, in a sense, with a letter L, which I suggest represents a pictogram illustration of a human being, and then a foot on that horizontal part of the capital L. So the word hell, for example, the letter H could represent human The E represents energy, and then you are on two L's. So hell upon earth could come out of this. It's all this clever sequencing of this language that we call English that has so many meanings attached to it. If we are to regard apes, for example, as being more primitive, tests have shown with chimpanzees that they are far better at memory of sequences of things than humans, and actually fare better in tests and things. They certainly have a greater physical strength than a human being. So in a way, a human, you could say, is in some ways inferior, depending on how you look at this, of course. But notice also another clue if we use the word Homo sapien, which can also be pronounced as Homo sapien. Notice you have the word ape in there. Not the way it is written, but the way it is pronounced. It sounds like ape in sapien. Another collective term for the ape family are to call them primates. Now let's look at the word primate. Prime means first, ape means infinite. So it's perhaps no surprise when we turn and look towards the ecclesiastical that we find an archbishop is described as a primate, which again seems a very strange use of this same word for two very different things, or which seem to be two very different things, as it were. So I thought I'd just share that with you, and I feel that this really highlights the subtle way that the English language is used as a spellcaster. It is used as much to mislead, but when you start looking at it with a new set of eyes, you start looking at these sequences of these characters, how they're put together, how these words are created from these characters, that what comes out of it, what is revealed from it, is a very different picture that I feel is a very useful tool that can help us to understand more about ourselves and also understand how humanity is continuously being misled, taken into that purely sort of human L aspect, hence the word elect and election, as opposed to that recognition of oneself as being an individual that is having a human experience. This threshold of death is not the end. It is only the end of the physicality. They're called remains because they are part of this reality and remain here and return to the earth, as it were. But the soul and the spirit within are eternal. It makes sense that there would be such a thing as a memory wipe when you have a further experience. It's an ongoing process anyway, because it would give a huge unfair advantage to retain all that experience and all that knowledge from a previous lifetime, which could then be used for self-serving benefits and things at the expense of others rather than benevolent, which I feel is why things are sort of wiped clean. It's the equivalent in today's world of if you pass on or sell your cell phone to another, you will restore factory settings, so it will not contain anything that you had stored on that phone, or certainly not at the level that the average person can access. But certainly you'll notice there's always a story when certain people are arrested that there are always these indecent pictures found on their hard drives of their computers, which shows there is a sub-level to that, in the same way there is a sub-level to us. That in many ways we're still in our infancy in coming to terms with and grasping that we are far more than we are told we are. to quote Archaic's channel. That's very true. The next video I'm going to come on to the topic of chronology and why I would suggest that we stop using this Anno Domini calendar. But I'll leave that to the next video. Until then, as always, unconditional love to you all. While it's just popped into my mind, a big thank you for the donations. That has really helped. And I am talking to put the basics on the table, as it were, food for myself and the cats and such like. So that keeps things ticking over. I'm still progressing with this book on etymology. I do have a couple of publishers in mind that eventually I will be approaching, but at this stage I'm still scratching the surface of it. I would estimate that it could run to maybe initially 200 pages at present. It could be more. A long way to go with this, but I just let things come as they come. It could be just one word in a comment to a video or in a conversation that sparks something, and I start looking into a particular word, looking at the prefixes such as what can be put in front of J-E-C-T. So you have the word eject and in and d and re as 4 examples that go with that sequence, which changes the entire meaning of the spell of that word. So, as always, unconditional love to you all, and do check out the description box below this video on the range of things that I offer you that can help you navigate your way through this life and what can seem like a challenge, what can seem like quite arduous experience. But it is purely perception on things, just the same with etymology, that perhaps with a fresh set of eyes looking at your situation, that I can help you find a more conducive experience, so it doesn't feel such a struggle, such a negative challenge, but out of it can emerge something very beautiful. So as always, unconditional love to you all.